Hello, good evening, and welcome to this edition of News Tonight with me, Bernice, Abu-Baidoo, Lansah. Let's take a look at our headlines. Minority leader describes President's Clemency request for shutdown stations as a brazen assault on the NCA's independence. Details as government gives 64 defaulting stations 30-day grace period to comply with NCA regulations.
Our goal is not punishment, but accountability, order, and the responsible stewardship of a public critical resource.
In this package, Chairman of Parliament's Health Committee hints of significant progress in resolving nurses' strike after meeting with officials of the GRNMA.
The discussions were fruitful, and the nurses have requested that they have to go back to their council.
Also, contract between Zoomlion and YEA will not be renewed as government assures of an audit into payments made after expiration of contract. And we'll send you to the Ashanti region where a BECE candidate who was delivered of a baby boy yesterday returned to continue her papers today. And in business, Transport Minister urges domestic airline operators to reduce fares in response to the Cedi's gains against major trading currencies. And on the international front, one passenger survives Air India crash that killed at least 200 people. We've got details of these and more here on News Tonight. Please stay with us. With insight. Now, some 64 stations closed down by the NCA earlier today have been given a 30-day grace period to satisfy NCA requirements for their operations after President Mahama requested clemency. The stations, including Asasi Radio, Wuntumi Radio, Happy FM and Radio GIJ, had their operations suspended by the authority for failing to satisfy various requirements, including operating without authorization. Owner of Asasi Radio, Gabi Asare Otredako, in a Facebook post, confirmed the shutdown of his station, admitting failure by management to renew the station's license in October 2024. Let me just bring you details of that statement. It reads, "Yes, it's true. Asasi Radio, which celebrates its 5th anniversary Saturday, has been shut down. GM informs me it's because the station delayed in renewing its license last year. It was to be renewed by October, but only done in December 2024. Now, here's a breakdown of the numbers of the stations per the statement we received from the NCA. So 28 stations were shut down for this reason, operating with expired authorization. So, and more on that also, 14 of these stations were shut down. And here's the reason. They were issued notices of revocation for failure to set up within 2 years from the date of their authorizations, but subsequently requested for inspection, but the process had not been completed due to various lapses they have to rectify, but they are still on air. Now, these stations are in violation of regulations 54 of the Electronic Communications Regulations 2011 LI 9091. So more on that, and remember, cumulatively, these stations are 64. I'm just giving you a breakdown of station per reason. So for 13 of these 64 stations, the reason for the closure is that they applied for authorization to continue operating and have been issued provisional authorization, but they have not settled the provisional authorization fees in full and hence do not have the valid authorization to continue operating. Now, this represents violation of Section 2(4) of the Electronic Communications Act 2008 Act 775. Now, to the next group. Now, this is 7 of these stations. And here's the reason, according to the NCA statement, they were closed down. They paid provisional authorization fees, but final authorization yet to be issued and have not fulfilled the requirements of Regulation 5(4) of the Electronic Communications Regulations 2011 LI 1991. So this is what the NCA is telling us about reasons why these 64 stations were closed earlier today prior to the president's decision for clemency. And well, even before Ghanaians could properly understand what was happening and process reasons for the closures, a statement signed by the Minister for Government Communications, Felix Ofosu-Kwakye, revealed President Mahama had directed the Minister for Communications, Digital Technology and Innovation to liaise with the NCA to immediately restore broadcast of the stations affected. And so that's just by way of information. If you're new to the story, what it is that earlier today, some radio stations were shut down. And even before we could digest the information, understand the reasons, and figure out why the president, figure out why they were shut down, the president gave a notice of clemency. Now, fast forward to Parliament, and the Minister of Communications appeared before the House. Here's what he said about the closures.
Our goal is not punishment, but accountability, order, and the responsible stewardship of a public critical resource. This is not routine housekeeping. This is a declaration against impunity, abuse, and inertia. The airwaves do not belong to the powerful and connected. They belong to the public, and we are duty-bound to govern them transparently and effectively. Our fight is not against free speech. It is against lawlessness, asset misappropriation, and regulatory defiance. I remain committed to reclaiming what rightfully belongs to the Ghanaian people and laying the foundations for a fair, modern, and technologically equipped broadcasting sector. Once again, Mr. Speaker, due to the clemency His Excellency the President has asked for, there is 30 days from today for all defaulting media houses to rectify their default and breaches.
So you just had the Minister of Communication explaining why these stations were closed earlier in the day. Well, there were a lot of reactions to his statement on the floor. Here's Minority Leader Alexander Apenyo marking, saying that the President's decision to request clemency was belated and only as a result of public backlash.
A lawyer from Kwesimintim and a member of this House argues that he finds no problem with an administrative authority vested with regulatory powers exceeding its mandate. Mr. Speaker, all that we are saying today will be referred to tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, so I would want to encourage Honorable Sector Minister to rather deepen the engagement process as directed by the President. Some of these belated actions for the purpose of optics will not help the cause of democracy. Stay away from the punitive actions. Stay away from this excuse of you need to enforce a regulation especially when in enforcing the regulation, you may be slipping out of the confines of the Constitution.
Well, taking his turn to react, Majority Leader Mahama Yariga took a swipe at Minority Leader for saying that this was illegal. Let's listen to him.
If we sit in this house and laws are being violated and ministers are taking steps to enforce those laws, and we stand in this house and attempt to condemn those ministers, then we might as well stop coming here. Because we are not here to make laws that should not be enforced. So when ministers are enforcing the laws, we should be the first to be commending them. I remember saying this about this same minister the last time he tried to enforce the law, and some members stood in this house and made statements that seemed to undermine efforts to enforce the law. This is the last thing that should be happening in this country, in this house, that we have enacted a law and a minister is enforcing the law, and we will stand in this chamber and try to take the minister on for enforcing the law. Please, let's stop it. Otherwise, there's no use being in this house.
Now, away from Parliament, but still on the same issue, let's break down the concerns raised on the floor. President of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, Cecil Sunkwa Mills, and Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleiman Abrahima, have joined me via Zoom for a conversation. Let me start with you, Mr. Sunkwa Mills. You are with the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. We've been at this for so long, even when we were having discussions about having a law regulating broadcasting in the country. Your quick assessment of what has happened today with the closure of the stations and the President's intervention.
Good evening to your viewers. Unfortunately, I'm on the road, so I cannot use the video. I think with what has happened today that we woke up this morning to this. And with the President's intervention for us, I think is giving us, it's commendable to say, and then it's giving us another 30 days for us to have the conversation that we're having now. And at least for the stations who were delivering news.
Hello, Mr. Sunkwa Mills.
So whilst they... Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, I lost you for a few seconds.
Can you hear me? Yes. And for the stations that have issues, the 64 stations, they still have the opportunity to still deliver media whilst resolving their issues and also engaging the NCA on specific issues. I mean, I would say that we started some exercise earlier on after the first closure of 6 stations, and that there were various problems. At least today we have a category, but I think we need to bring some compliance to the industry. DEBA is against stations being compliant, so we are actually looking forward to this to happen. But at the same time, one very important thing is that we need to have an intermediary interface. Today we are lucky we had President come out and give Clemency, which has given some 30-day grace. In the absence of the President Clemency, how would these stations get a breather for 30 days? And this is why we need to look at new laws, look at working between the platforms that the NCA regulates, and then also with what the NMC does in terms of content, and bring this together to create an environment or a platform that can ensure that the requirements of media access is also sustained and gives a chance to the stations who need that platform.
Right, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you in a moment, but let me just bring in Media Foundation for West Africa's Executive Director, Suleiman Abrahima. Grateful for your time this evening, sir. We just heard Mr. Sunkwa Mills say the President's intervention is commendable. There are those who do not agree. For example, Minority Leader Alexander Afenyo-Markin, thinks that this is a bad precedent. He says that the president should allow institutions to act independently. He calls it a brazen assault. What are your thoughts?
I think that the position taken by the opposition on this matter is quite confusing, because one read the decision to suspend.
Sorry, Mr. Bryma, I can hardly hear you.
Is it better now?
Not too good, but I can manage it.
Okay, let me
Well,
try.
So while I wait for Mr. Bryma to get a better connection to us, let me come back to you, Mr. Sunkwan Mills. You spoke about the 30-day grace period. Some have said that is not enough. On the floor of Parliament, for example, when the issue about the list largely being of community radio stations, one MP said, look, we know that even given a year, some of them aren't able to satisfy the regulations. 30 days, I beg your pardon, is not enough. What do you think?
So by saying that, first of all, I'll tell you that with the NCA, for some stations who had issues to do in terms of finance, they ended up with some proposals of payment plans. Now, payment plans may exceed 30 days, but within the 30 days to make those arrangements. And for those who say that within a year, they will not be able to meet the regulation, how did you end up actually picking up an authorization to do broadcasting when really run a media business? What is going to happen to your staff if you cannot meet the regulations, for example? So It means basically then you are not in the business of media. So for that one, it's a bit difficult. Yeah.
Right. Let me re-engage Suleiman Bryma. Hopefully the connection will be better now. Mr. Bryma, you were responding to the minority leader's concerns about the president's posturing on this matter.
Yeah, so I was saying that the position taken by my good friend, Honorable Afenyo-Markin, is quite confusing, and I believe it is untenable. The NCA's decision, or the ministry's decision, is essentially about regulatory. In the past, it's been done. It was done under the MPP regime. We had an issue with that because it was done in a very discriminatory manner. They just targeted pro-NDC stations and shut them down. Took NPP-aligned radio stations that had committed the same regulatory breaches. I think on this occasion, when the first 6 were shut down, we had cause issue a statement to say, look, we hope that that bad, precedent that was set up by the MPP in terms of very partisan way of implementing the law is not something that is being repeated. And we were given the assurance that no, there is fairness and transparency in the process. Once there is fairness and transparency in the process, and it doesn't matter whether a station is owned by an MPP person or NDC person, once there's a regulatory breach, a decision is taken, we don't have a problem with that, because we cannot be advocating for impunity. We cannot say that media freedom means that people should just do anything. Laws are made for purposes. Laws are made to be complied with. And so I really find it difficult to understand what the opposition's main position on this one is.
Right. There are also concerns about how this impacts on media freedom. Some have suggested instead of a closure, could you have probably engaged, develop a certain roadmap to allow for these stations to satisfy those requirements instead of going outright to close them down? Do you agree? Does this amount to a stifling of media freedom?
Well, to the extent that the law is implemented in a fair way, I don't think so. I don't think that media freedom means disregard for law. In fact, if we were to do that, then we would all get ourselves into problems, because the next day somebody can just take up your frequency, the frequencies that EIB network uses, and begin to broadcast. And then we say, oh, if you go after that network to close it down, that would be a breach of media freedom or a press freedom violation. I think that press freedom is also ensured by compliance with the law. Because as I've said, if we were to say, oh, let everyone grab a frequency and start broadcasting, and if you go after them is a media freedom breach, then there will be chaos in the system. As far as I know, there are some of these stations that were even written to in 2022 to remind them that their frequency authorizations had expired. The question is, why did they ignore it? 2022 they were written to, 2023 they were written to, and they continue to ignore it. Why so? Is it because people felt, well, they had, people who are, in higher positions and therefore nothing can happen to them, or what? So I think that the laws have to be enforced, and I'm happy that the president has decided to grant this grace period so that the stations affected can do the right thing, regularize their authorization, and continue with their broadcast.
Do you think, finally for you, Mr. Brima, do you think that after the 30-day period, with whatever roadmap is decided, if there will be any at all, a closure will be justified then?
Well, if there is legitimate ground, if any of the affected states is able to, or have issues, legitimate issues to say, look, because of ABC, it will be very difficult for me to do whatever I'm supposed to do within a 30-day period. Because as the ministers or the NCA statement is concerned, there are various categories of infraction. There are some whose authorization have simply expired. Now, if per the rule, if your authorization has expired and you are going for, a frequency authorization, technically you are not going for a renewal. You are going for a fresh license. And if you go for a fresh license, it comes with different conditions. For example, you have to be on test transmission. You have to undergo inspections and so on and so forth. I think those are the things that the NCA and the ministry will have to trash out with the owners. Those who have already been broadcasting and had their frequencies expired, if they go through the process now, are they going to be issued fresh authorizations, or it will be a renewal? Because if it is fresh authorization, it comes with different conditions. So those are the things that I think they have to discuss with them. And if such stations will have issues meeting certain conditions within 30 days, I'm sure that they can talk about it.
I'm grateful for your time. And let me conclude the conversation with the president of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, because the question on a lot of people's minds questions are, one, do these stations belong to your association? And are there any internal mechanisms to ensure that your members comply with some of these laws that govern broadcasting in the country?
Sorry, can I take that again?
Sure, I'm saying that the big question on a lot of people's minds is, are these stations members of GIBA? If they are there any internal mechanisms to ensure that members of your association comply with laws that govern broadcasting in the country?
Yeah, we have just been asking for the list, and I think we'll be getting the list soon. But as I think, only 2 members were affected, and they actually sit in one of the low category, where they either one late payment or they were just waiting for an inspection. But most of the stations are not members of our association.
The community radio stations, right?
Happen, we get to get the opportunity to bring them in. So, but most of them are not part of our membership.
I'm grateful for your time this evening. That's President of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, Cecil Sonkwa Mills. Earlier you heard Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleimana Brima, all sharing your thoughts on the Clemency the president requested for some 64 stations that were closed earlier today. We're keeping our eyes on the story and furnishing you with details as and when they are available. You're watching News Tonight with me, Bernice, Abu-Baidoo, Lansah. When I come back shortly, we'll be talking about government's decision not to renew that contract between the YEA and Zoomlion. Do stay. Thank you so much for staying here on News Tonight with me, Bernice, Abu-Baidoo, Lansah. And after years of advocacy, investigative journalist Manasseh Azuri-Awone is smiling, at least, for getting results for years of work done in investigating dealings of Zoomlion in relation to sanitation contracts in the country. And today, at least we know that government is taking a move which was one that he called for, not continuing with the contract between Zoomlion and the YEA. You may recall a few weeks ago on social media, he received a lot of support for that call, and we have just received information from government that the contract will not be continued. And Manasseh Azuri-Awuni, investigative journalist, joins me via Zoom for more on this. Manasseh, how are you?
Fine, Bernice.
Right, and I've seen a lot of congratulatory messages to you for your advocacy on social media. But for those who have not been following, really, briefly, just tell us why you strongly believed that Zoomlion didn't deserve a contract renewal.
Well, Bernice, this contracted in 2006, and next year will be 20 years since Zoomlion was contracted to manage sweepers in every district in this country. And I believe that every district assembly can people to sweep the market and public places. They have district sanitation and environmental of the department for that. They are on salary, they are paid and all. So I believe they have what it takes to do that. We don't need a third party. A third party company takes a chunk of the money. The people are not motivated to work. And then the assemblies would have to usually generated funds to employ the sweepers. And they don't have control over the people Zoomlion manages. Acts of corruption over the years have stalled the of this model. But the contractor, the private company Zoomlion, continues to take. And talking about payments, the people under this arrangement are to be allocated 850 cedis per the contract. But the contract again says that Zoomlion should take 650 cedis a month. And this, for me, is injustice, defeats the purpose of the contract. And the Youth Employment Agency, which was people who are not as fortunate as perhaps you and I. And I think over the years, I have not had a government that argued against the structure, but the political will to take action is what has been lacking. Fortunately, Ramani Mahama has shown the way, and I think it is worth commending.
Right, so beyond the decision not to renew that contract, we also know that there will be an audit of payments and claims, because after the expiration of the contract, Zoomlion was paid some monies, we are told. Also, there will be competitive procurement moving forward. Sweeper fees will be adjusted because the government anticipates that by deciding not to renew the contracts, it would save some money, and which will translate then into sweepers receiving more. Also, you had issues with the fumigation contract. I remember that investigative one that you did. We are told that contracts that have not been performed satisfactorily will be reviewed and, where appropriate, terminated in accordance with their terms and upon the advice of the Attorney General. So you've gotten the results that you were looking for, but what are you looking forward to seeing in terms of implementation of all these points that were in the response to you from government?
Well, I think the fight far from over, and it shouldn't be a Manasseh versus Zoomlion. It should be Ghanaians against Zoomlion and its collaborators in Bernice. Note that there are some officials, when they are in government, they support deals. Zoomlion has never taken a gun to any government official to sign this contract or to be paid. There are collaborators, most of whom I say questionable, who push these deals. And in the coming days, I expect that we pay attention to them. We should also even pay attention to the district, municipal, and metropolitan chief executives who would see this as an opportunity to also, in their own form of corruption, we are going to attention and focus on the MMDCs so that they would run the contract that they are supposed to run. Those that they are supposed to give out, we would monitor to ensure money so that we don't shift the corruption from the center to this. And then at the end of the day, the assemblies, the cities, municipalities, and then our towns will continue to be dirty. So I think that the fight is fair, We will monitor to ensure that everybody who is supposed to take an action in this value chain does right in the interest of Ghana and then the people we send out cities and municipalities.
Grateful for your time this evening. Manasseh GHOne is an investigative journalist who petitioned the president not to renew government contracts with Zoomlion via the Youth Employment Agency. Let's do some other stories now. And Chairman of Parliament's Health Committee, Dr. Mark Nawani, has described the recent engagement between Parliament and striking nurses as fruitful. According to him, the meeting brought together key stakeholders and members of the Health Committee and resulted in significant progress. He further stated that the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association representatives requested time to consult their leadership and get back to Parliament.
The discussions were fruitful, and we've asked, or the nurses have requested that they have to go back to their council. By their regulations, they have to go back to their council and then we'll come back. Or they'll come back. Or we'll hear something from them. I think that is fair. If the Busapayans to tell you to go and lead a discussion, you have to bring back the information to them first before any other issue can come out. So at this juncture, I know that you want some information more than this, but let's just exercise patience.
And to some exciting news, the BECE candidate who gave birth to a baby boy yesterday while writing her exam at the Asenua Presbyterian Junior High School in Mamponting, Kwabre East Municipality of the Ashanti region, returned this morning to continue her papers. She went into labor during the ICT exam after requesting to use the washroom. Her parents have assured school authorities she is fit to continue with her exams. My colleague Ivan Fumado has the full report.
It was unclear whether the young student who delivered a baby boy while writing her second paper in the ongoing basic education certificate examination could rejoin her colleagues. Before the exam would commence on day 2, however, the student, whose identity has been withheld, arrived at the exam center to continue her papers. Head teacher of the Asenua Presbyterian Junior High School, Michael Tega, indicated that her parents had given assurances that she was fit to continue writing her examinations. I've been in constant contact with her parents. My girl child coordinators have also been supporting. I was given assurances that the doctors have certified her fit to write the exam. Thank God she was able to come today to write. Mr. Tega explained that the school was not aware she was due, as her family had told authorities she was just 4 months pregnant. When I realized she wasn't coming to school, I approached her parents, who told me she wasn't well. They later told me the news that she was pregnant. So I called her and encouraged her not to truncate her education. I was told she was just 4 months pregnant. I was surprised to hear that she had given birth. She was conveyed to the hospital immediately after writing her English paper. Awaiting her afternoon paper, Career Technology, it appears she will be shuffling between the hospital and the exam center until next week Tuesday, when she takes her final paper. For GHOne News, Ivan Heathcote Fumado, Mamponte, Kwabre East.
Still on the BECE, a total of 61 candidates with hearing and visual impairments from special education institutions in the Eastern region are taking part in the BECE. The candidates include 44 hearing impaired students, 26 males, 18 females, and 17 visually impaired candidates, 10 males and 7 females. Eastern Regional Correspondent GHOne reports.
In the Eastern region, 44 hearing impaired and 19 visually impaired candidates are writing this year's basic education certificate examination.
Deaf, we have 26 boys writing, and then 18 girls writing, total 44 writing for the deaf. And then the blind, we have 10 boys, and then the 7 girls, making 70 candidates writing so far in the Eastern region.
I visited Pentecost Preparatory School, where 12 candidates from Koforidua School for the Deaf are writing the exams. These hearing impaired are writing the same examination as their able-bodied schoolmates. What sets them apart is not ability, but the extra 30 minutes they are granted to level their playing field.
They run the same curriculum as the normal in quote people, people with without disabilities. They write the same examination, the same question that they answer together. The only difference is that they grant them extra time because of their disabilities. They grant them extra time.
But the challenge goes beyond the questions and time. On paper, intermittent instructions from supervisors can sometimes get lost in translation, leaving some candidates struggling to keep up. Azuma Kwame Kennedy, Eastern Regional Special Education Coordinator, identifies gaps in supervision and support for these students. He appealed to WAEC to include special education teachers as examiners to fairly assess these candidates.
In the marking, sometimes the deaf, sometimes they sign as to their understanding. So some of them, where they write as they sign. So sometimes I would suggest that if possible, if during markings, they can get teachers who teach them, deaf teachers. Those who teach in the schools can be their examiners, can be selected as examiners, and then they can mark their papers for them, if it will be possible anyway.
Despite these hurdles, these young candidates remain determined. The aspirations are clear: to rise beyond societal limitations and chase dreams in teaching, nursing, and even engineering. For GHOne TV and Star FM, Lansah, Koforidua, Eastern Region.
Now, a former Director General of the Ghana Education Service, Charles Aheto Chega, has advocated for stricter and punitive legal framework to deter individuals from engaging in examination malpractices. His call follows an announcement by the West Africa Examination Council, WAEC, that some 14 individuals were arrested for their involvement in malpractices. He spoke to Joshua Kojo-Mensah earlier on the newsroom.
You may be right to a certain extent. The whole issue is not viewed with the severity in which it occurs. I think that the legal situation should be changed so that it will become very strict and ensure that everybody who eventually engages in examination malpractice is really dealt with stringent regulations. So for me, a lot of people continue to do this. But when people begin to see that we are serious about examination malpractice and we really are traitors, they will begin to change their act. And so I believe we'll look at the issue and the seriousness that it requires and ensure that those who have been arrested, especially the vigilators, and to ensure that you can't hide under the guise later and begin to perpetuate your trade as maybe an advocate for examination malpractice. So it's very good that these people have been accosted, and we will use them to ensure the sanctity of the examination.
Away from the ongoing BECE, former Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is facing more legal troubles. And the Economic and Organized Crime Office, YOCO, and the National Intelligence Bureau, NIB, have also declared him a wanted man. The two state agencies have reportedly launched separate active investigations into his financial dealings during his tenure as Finance Minister. This follows ongoing efforts by the Office of the Special Prosecutor to get Ken Ofori-Atta to answer questions about alleged financial misconduct. Deputy Attorney General Justice Clemency also confirmed that the Office of the Attorney General is leading efforts coordinating with foreign governments to extradite the former finance minister. And former Energy and Education Minister Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh is being investigated by the National Intelligence Bureau, NIB. This is according to the Deputy Attorney General, Dr. Justice Clemency, and he says this, however, does not mean the former minister is guilty of any crime. According to the Deputy AG, Dr. Prempeh is being invited for questioning on projects undertaken during his tenure across the two ministries over the 8-year period of the Akufo-Addo administration. This includes the infamous mathematical set procurement by the Education Ministry. This is still news tonight with me, Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. We've got business news shortly. And in business, Transport Minister Joseph Nikpe is appealing to domestic airline operators to reduce transport fares in light of the Cedi's recent appreciation against the US dollar and other major trading currencies. He urged operators to follow the example set by road transport operators who've reduced fares by some 15%. Speaking to journalists at a stakeholders breakfast meeting organized by the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority here in Accra, Mr. Nikpe emphasized the benefits of the Cedi's gain should trickle down to every consumer, particularly those in the services sector.
You are aware of the gains our Cedi has made. Cedi has appreciated against all the major currencies, and as such, we anticipate that it will trickle down to the service delivery in our country, the cost of doing business in our country. And you know that the domestic airlines, let me say that because there are only two airlines, they have a kind of monopoly that is keeping them to be very tight on their affairs. But this breakfast meeting is one that we use to appeal to them to consider what the road transport sector did by reviewing their prices downwards to 15% and urging them to take a cue from that and also do a reduction in their fares.
And after years of a decline in participation, the Ghana National Association of Farmers and Fishermen, NAF, is undergoing a revival. With its 8th National Delegates Congress slated for July, the association is charting a new path to restore its legacy, unify farmers and fisherfolk across the country. It also used the opportunity to elect leadership to spearhead Ghana's agriculture and fisheries future.
Once the pulse of Ghana's agricultural and marine voice, the Ghana National Association of Farmers and Fishermen, GNAFF, had in recent years been plagued by constitutional breaches, partisan interference, administrative dysfunction, and the sale of association assets. But this is changing. At a press conference in Accra, consultant to the Ghana National Association of Farmers and Fishermen, Francis Opai-Tete, announced the bold steps being taken to restore the once vibrant association to its former glory.
When the northern region is done, we would have successfully elected 1,827 officers for the 261 districts, municipal and metropolitan assemblies in Ghana, and 128 officers for the 16 regions also in Ghana. The National Congress of the Ghana National Association of Farmers and Fishermen will be held between Friday 11th and Saturday 12th July.
At the Pentecost Convention Center in Kumasi, there, new national executives will be elected to take over leadership and renew the association's mandate.
So it behoves on us if we want to be recognized by any government that is in power, then we have to put off our political masks and then be Ghanaians as we are. If the government sees that we are not partisan, definitely any policy that is coming out with, he has to call us.
From pioneering Farmers' Day in 1985 to being a major advocacy voice for rural livelihoods, GNAFF's rebirth comes at a crucial time when Ghana's agricultural sector faces modern challenges.
When we get the national executive inaugurated, then we form a small committee to go into it and make sure all those things are retrieved.
Nomination forms have been opened with various executive positions available. The press conference ended with heartfelt tributes to the founding members and sponsors of the reorganization process. As Ghana faces a food security future tied to climate change, market access, and policy reform, the revival of GNAFF could not have come at a more critical moment. A united voice for farmers and fisherfolk is no longer optional. It is essential.
That'll be all for business news. Up next is sports with Monica Bukari.
Many thanks for joining me here on Sports Brief. I am Monica Bukari. Let's begin with some women's football. And the latest FIFA rankings released earlier today saw the Black Queens of Ghana slip in both the latest rankings. The Queens lost 2 games, drew 2 and won 1 under new head coach Kim Lars Bjorkengren after taking over from former head coach Nora Hoptel as head coach. The team was ranked 5th in Africa and 65th worldwide in March, but recent results have seen them fall to 6th on the continent and 66th globally. Now to some men's football, and the Galka League Clubs Association, Galka, has officially launched the 2025 edition of the prestigious President's Cup. Kumasi Asante Kotoko and Accra Hearts of Oak will renew their historic rivalry scheduled for Sunday, July 6th. The annual fixture is held in honor of the sitting president, with this year's edition set to celebrate President John Dramani Mahama, who is serving his 2nd term in office. Fans will be granted free entry to the match, a gesture aimed at encouraging strong attendance and support for the domestic game. The launch unveiled key details surrounding this year's event, including matchday logistics, sponsorship packages, and fan engagement initiatives. The clash will take place at the Accra Sports Stadium. In attendance at the launch was EIB Network CEO Bulare, who is also a member of the sponsorship committee. Now, ahead of Sunday's big game in the MTN FA Cup finals against Golden Cakes FC, head coach of Kumasi Asante Kotoko Karim Zito says his side are poised for a showdown when both sides lock horns on Sunday, June 15th, 2025.
The name defeated the what do you call it? The game, the competition. The competition is because all around the world, you might see a smaller team taking out the bigger teams. So it's like the younger teams use the intrinsic motivation to play the game. the desire to play against the bigger clubs. They motivate themselves while playing Kotoko, while playing a bigger club. So that makes it very, very difficult. That makes it very, very difficult. So seriously, if you don't change your approach and you do the normal one, you will fail. Because it is not easy, you will fail. So that makes it very, very difficult because he loses nothing. We beating them is nothing. But if they have the opportunity, it's something. It makes them great. It makes them this. So that is the most difficult part of the what do you call it?
Away from that, on the international front, Trent Alexander-Arnold has officially been unveiled by Real Madrid as the latest summer acquisition. Although his contract with Liverpool was due to expire on June 30th, Real Madrid paid a fee to bring the England international to the Spanish capital ahead of schedule, enabling him to feature in the upcoming Club World Cup. Trent has signed a 6-year contract with the La Liga giants, with the deal also including a staggering £1 billion release clause, which has been the standard for all signings at Real Madrid. Trent Alexander-Arnold will be wearing the number 12 jersey at Real Madrid. And that's all for sports. My name is Monica Bukayu. Back to you, Bernice. Okay, let's bring you some international news up next.
Very sad news. A British man identified as Vishwashkumar Ramesh is the sole survivor of a tragic airplane crash in India that claimed 241 lives. Seated in 11A on the London-bound Boeing 7878, he survived after the aircraft crashed shortly after taking off from Ahmedabad in western India, which was headed to Gatwick Airport. His brother, Nayan Kumar Ramesh, expressed disbelief, saying he has no idea how his brother escaped the wreckage alive. Air India confirmed the flight carried some 231 passengers, including 169 Indian nationals, 53 Britons, 7 Portuguese and 1 Canadian. The cause of the crash remains under investigation. But what we know so far is that all passengers and crew members, except for Ramesh, lost their lives. You can find more news on starfm.com.gh, but that'll be all for tonight on News Tonight with me, Bernice Abu-Baidoo. I'm grateful for your company. Do enjoy the rest of your evening.